A ferocious dragon emerges from stormy clouds, devouring a skyship amid lightning and screaming. The morning shift on the Aurora's Dream started like any other Tuesday. Captain Henry Martinez stood on the bridge, coffee cup in hand, watching the stars drift past the wide viewport. He had been flying cargo routes for 15 years, and this milk run between Station 7 and the mining colonies should have been easy money. "Captain, we're approaching the nebula belt in about 2 hours," said Lisa Chen from the pilot's seat. She was young, only 26, but she could fly through an asteroid field with her eyes closed. Henry trusted her completely. "Good, keep us on schedule. The company wants this shipment delivered by Thursday." Henry took another sip of his coffee. It was terrible, as always, but it kept him awake during the long shifts. Paul Douglas looked up from his engineering console. His gray hair and weathered face showed his 40 years of space work. "Boss, I'm seeing some weird readings from the scanners." "Nothing major, just odd. Never seen anything quite like this before. They're saying unusual atmospheric conditions ahead. Recommendation is to delay passage for 6 hours until it clears. Storm warnings are often exaggerated." But he also had responsibility for his crew. Paul stood up from his console. "Henry, I've been flying longer than most people have been alive. When the weather service says level 4, we should listen. Let me talk to headquarters. Maybe I can get us a delay." The company would not accept delays. If Henry refused to fly, they would find a captain who would. "They're threatening my job," Henry told his crew after the final call. "They say if we delay, I'm fired and they'll send someone else through anyway." "What do we do?" "Company rules be damned." Instead of white or blue, the lightning glowed green and purple. "That's not normal," Lisa said quietly. Karen checked her instruments 3 times. "The clouds are moving against the solar wind. That shouldn't be possible. It's like something is controlling them." Paul monitored the power systems while Lisa fought to keep them steady. The shaking grew worse. "I'm compensating for the turbulence, but it's getting harder," Lisa said through gritted teeth. Young Danny Foster, the cargo specialist, came onto the bridge. He was fresh out of academy, this being only his 3rd flight. "Captain, the cargo is secure, but I'm hearing strange sounds from the hull, like metal groaning. Go back to your station and monitor the cargo bay sensors." Karen's navigation screen went fuzzy for a moment before clearing. "We're losing signal strength," she reported. "If this gets worse, we won't be able to navigate." At current speed, 40 minutes. The lightning increased, striking in rapid bursts that lit up the bridge with eerie purple light. "Captain, the energy readings just jumped off the scale," Paul said, his voice tight with concern. "There's something in there, something big." Deep in the center, he saw movement. A shadow, vast and dark, shifted within the storm. It was huge, bigger than their ship, bigger than any ship he had ever seen. "Lisa, can we go around?" "Going around would add 3 hours to our trip." They looked almost like eyes, giant glowing eyes watching their ship. "What is that?" Karen whispered. Nobody answered. They all stared as the shadow grew larger, coming toward them through the lightning and clouds. The shadow exploded from the clouds with a roar that shook the entire ship. Henry grabbed the edge of his console to keep from falling. The creature was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Aurora's Dream. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with blue and silver light, each scale crackling with electrical energy. "What in the name of—" Paul couldn't finish his sentence. His mouth hung open in shock. It was a dragon. An actual dragon, but not like the ones from old Earth stories. This one had no wings. Instead, it moved through space like a fish through water, its long body twisting and turning with impossible grace. Its head was enormous, with horns that curved back like a crown. The eyes that Henry had seen glowed bright yellow, and they were looking right at the ship. "Evasive maneuvers, now!" Henry shouted. Lisa's hands flew across the controls. The ship lurched to the left, engines screaming as they pushed to maximum power. The dragon followed, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth that glowed with the same energy as the lightning around them. "It's gaining on us," Karen yelled, watching the tracking display. "Speed is impossible, readings don't make sense." Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Hull integrity compromised on decks 2 and 3, Paul called out, his fingers dancing across his engineering console. "Emergency shields holding but barely." "Captain, the cargo bay is shaking apart. I can see the creature through the porthole. It's right outside. Lisa pulled the ship into a sharp dive, heading deeper into the storm. Lightning struck all around them, hitting the ship's shields with bright flashes. I'm trying to lose it in the clouds, but it's following our every move. I think it's following our energy output. We'd be dead in the water. Paul shook his head. We can reduce power output, but it'll slow us down. The ship spun, throwing everyone against their restraints. Henry's vision blurred from the force of impact. Breach on deck 4, breach on deck 4. The computer's voice was calm despite the emergency. Emergency bulkheads closing. Decompression in Section 7. Its scales weren't just reflecting light, they were generating it. Energy flowed across its body in waves, pulsing with each movement. The creature was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It's not just an animal, Lisa said quietly. Look at its eyes. There's intelligence there. Intelligent or not, it's trying to kill us, Paul shouted as another impact rocked the ship. We need a plan. The background hum of the ship's engines dropped to a lower pitch. For a moment, it seemed to work. The dragon slowed its pursuit, its glowing eyes becoming less intense. It's working, it's backing off, Danny's voice came through, filled with hope. But then the dragon did something unexpected. It stopped completely, floating in the storm about 100 meters from the ship, its head tilted to the side, studying them. The gesture was almost curious, like a cat examining a new toy. What's it doing? Karen whispered. The dragon opened its mouth. Instead of attacking, it released a stream of pure energy into space. The beam was bright blue, so intense it hurt to look at. The energy swirled around the ship, not touching it, but creating a cage of light. It's surrounding us, Lisa said. We can't move forward. The energy field is too strong. Its movements were more careful now, almost gentle. It circled the ship, and Henry realized it was examining them from every angle. The creature's eyes never blinked, never looked away. Sir, I don't think it wants to destroy us anymore, Karen said. I think it wants something else. The creature was looking at him, really looking at him the way one person looks at another. It's trying to communicate, Lisa breathed. The dragon pulled back and opened its mouth again. This time, no energy came out. Instead, it made a sound, a series of deep tones that vibrated through the ship's hull. The sound was rhythmic, almost like speech. Is it talking to us? Danny asked over the communication system. I think so, Henry said. He stepped closer to the viewport, looking directly at the dragon. But we have no way to understand it. Its claws reached out and grabbed the ship's external sensor array, crushing it with ease. Our communications, it destroyed our main transmitter. Karen's voice was full of despair. Paul's console lit up with red warnings. Power core temperature rising. The damage is affecting the cooling systems. The ship shuddered again as the dragon's tail swept across the hull. More alarms joined the chorus of warnings already filling the bridge. Henry felt sweat dripping down his back, despite the cold air from the damaged life support systems. Captain, we've got fires breaking out on Deck 5. Danny's voice cracked through the static-filled communication system. The automatic suppressors aren't working. Already trying, but the circuits are fried from that last hit. Paul's fingers moved frantically across his console. I need to get down there and do it by hand. Paul ran from the bridge, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the emergency locker on his way out. The door slid shut behind him, leaving the bridge crew one person short. The dragon circled again, its massive body creating shadows that passed over the viewport. Every time it moved, waves of electromagnetic energy washed over the ship, making the lights flicker and the instruments go fuzzy. I'm losing navigation, Karen said, hitting her console in frustration. The readings are all wrong. I can't tell which way is out of the storm anymore. It was slower, less accurate, but at least it worked. Lisa fought with the controls, trying to keep the ship steady. Captain, we're venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. At this rate, we'll run out of breathable air in 3 hours. The number hit Henry like a punch to the gut. Even if they could escape the dragon, even if they could get out of the storm, rescue was at least 6 hours away. Another impact. This one was different. The dragon had grabbed onto the ship with its front claws and was pulling itself closer. The metal screamed under the pressure. Through the viewport, Henry could see the creature's face just meters away. Its breath created clouds of glowing vapor that froze instantly in the cold of space. It's trying to tear us open, Lisa shouted. Emergency escape pods, everyone prepare to abandon ship. Henry made the hardest decision of his career. The Aurora's dream had been his home for 5 years, but it was just metal and circuits. His crew was what mattered. Karen stood up from her station, but before she could move toward the escape pod bay, a massive section of the hull ripped away. The breach was in the corridor just outside the bridge. Karen saw it through the door's window. The vacuum of space was visible, stars shining through the torn metal. The corridor is gone. We can't reach the escape pods from here. Karen's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. Henry looked at the damage reports. The escape pod bays were on Deck 3. The corridors between the bridge and Deck 3 were now exposed to space. They were trapped. Emergency suits, everyone. Henry opened the locker and started pulling out the bulky survival suits. We'll have to go outside and walk along the hull to reach the pods. Walking on the outside of a damaged ship while a space dragon attacked them seemed like madness. But staying inside meant certain death when the life support finally failed. They were pulling on their suits when Paul's voice came through the communication system. Captain. Captain, can you hear me? It's feeding on it. Both were suited up now, their faces visible through the clear face plates. You two head for the escape pods. I'm going to engineering. Karen, you go ahead. Get to the pods and prepare them for launch. If we're not there in 15 minutes, you leave without us. Henry and Lisa went the other way, toward engineering at the bottom of the ship. They had to climb through maintenance shafts and crawl through access tubes. The dragon's roars echoed through the hull around them, making the metal vibrate. When they finally reached engineering, what Henry saw made him stop in his tracks. The dragon had torn a huge hole in the outer hull, and its head was inside the ship. But it wasn't attacking. Its mouth was open, pressed against the power core's protective housing. Blue energy flowed from the core into the dragon's mouth in a steady stream. Paul stood to the side, his suit covered in soot from fighting the fires. It's been doing this for 5 minutes. Just drinking the energy like water. All that attacking, it was just trying to get to food. Its scales, which had been bright and crackling with energy before, were now dull in places. There were scars on its hide, old wounds that had healed badly. It's hurt, Henry realized. Look, there on its side. That's a deep gash, probably infected. Paul checked his console and his face went pale. Captain, by feeding off our core, it drained too much power. The containment field is failing. Then the core goes critical, and we have a meltdown. It had just been so desperate for energy that it couldn't control itself. Everyone to the escape pods, now, Henry shouted. This ship is about to explode. The countdown to core meltdown echoed through the ship's emergency system. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Each second felt like an eternity. Move, 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 Henry shouted, pushing Paul ahead of him through a twisted doorway. They reached the escape pod bay on Deck 3 just as Karen was sealing the first pod. Through the small window, Henry could see Danny Foster and 2 other crew members already strapped inside. Karen waved frantically for them to hurry. Get in pod 2, Karen pointed to the next chamber. Henry climbed through the hatch with Lisa and Paul right behind him. The space was cramped, barely enough room for 3 people in their bulky suits. He hit the emergency launch button, and the pod systems came to life with a series of beeps and clicks. 90 seconds to core breach, the computer announced calmly. Why isn't it launching? Lisa asked, her voice tight with panic. Paul leaned over to check the control panel. It's running pre-launch checks, safety protocols. The pod finally released with a loud clunk and shot away from the dying ship. Henry watched through the viewport as the Aurora's dream grew smaller behind them. Karen's pod launched a moment later, following close behind. 30 seconds to core breach, the computer said. The dragon still hadn't moved. It floated there next to the ship, its massive head turned toward the engineering section where the power core was failing. It's going to die, Lisa whispered. It's too close. When the core explodes, it'll be caught in the blast. Before Henry could answer, Danny's voice came through the pod's communication system. He was in the other pod with Karen and the rest of the crew. Captain, look at the dragon. Something's happening. Then the dragon opened its mouth and released a beam of pure blue light directly at the Aurora's dream. What's it doing? Paul shouted. The beam hit the ship's engineering section, right where the failing power core was located. The dragon's energy poured into the ship, and Henry suddenly understood. It's trying to stabilize the core. It's trying to stop the meltdown. No amount of external energy can stop a containment failure once it starts. It's working. Lisa pressed her face against the viewport. The core temperature is dropping. I can see it on the emergency display. The creature was giving everything it had, every bit of energy in its massive body, to save the ship it had nearly destroyed. Then young Danny Foster spoke up again, his voice filled with wonder instead of fear. "Captain, I don't think the dragon was trying to hurt us at all. I've been thinking about how it acted. It was confused, not mean. It didn't attack us until we tried to run away. The attacking, the grabbing, it was just trying to get to what it needed to survive." The dragon's body went limp, floating in space like a rag doll, but the Aurora's dream was stable. The core meltdown had been stopped. "It saved us," Lisa said quietly. "After everything we tried to do to get away from it, after we probably seemed like we were attacking it with our shields and weapons, it still saved us." It looked at them through the viewport, and Henry saw something in that look that made his chest tight. The dragon wasn't just intelligent. It had feelings. It understood gratitude. It understood sacrifice. "We have to help it," Danny said. "It's dying. It used all its energy to save us, and now it's dying. Small ones, but they generate energy. At least 5 hours, maybe 6 with the storm interference. They might not make it." But Henry looked at the dragon, at this magnificent creature that had sacrificed everything to save them, and he made his decision. "We're going to share our power with the dragon, all of it." "Maybe," Henry admitted. "But that creature just gave up everything to save our lives. The least we can do is try to save its life too, even if it means taking a risk with our own." One by one, the rest of the crew agreed. Karen set her pod systems to external broadcast mode. "Ready when you are, Captain." It was small, about the size of a lunch box, but it glowed with steady blue light. He held it up to the viewport where the dragon could see it. The dragon's eyes brightened just a little, recognizing what Henry was offering. The creature moved closer very gently and pressed its snout against the pod's hull. Henry felt the vibration through the metal. "Opening external port now," Henry said, and released the power cell into space. The small power cell floated in space between the pod and the dragon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dragon opened its mouth very carefully and drew the cell inside with a gentle breath. Blue light flashed briefly as the creature absorbed the energy. Karen released her pod's power cell next, then Danny's pod did the same. 3 small lights drifted toward the dragon, tiny offerings compared to the massive amount of energy the creature had given to save their ship. But the dragon accepted each one with what looked like gratitude. The change was small but noticeable. The dragon's eyes grew slightly brighter. Its scales began to shimmer again with faint light. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the creature alive. "Life support switching to reserve power," the computer announced in Henry's pod. Estimated air supply, 4 hours, 17 minutes. Both of them looked scared but also proud of what they had done. "No regrets?" Henry asked them. "None," Lisa said firmly. Paul managed a weak smile. "Well, maybe a few small regrets, but I can live with them. For 4 hours anyway." The creature positioned itself between the pods and the worst of the storm, its large body acting as a shield against the lightning and electromagnetic waves. "It's protecting us," Danny said over the communication system. "Just like it protected the ship after it stabilized the core." Each bolt that struck the creature made its scales glow brighter for a moment as it absorbed the energy. The dragon was feeding again, but this time on the natural energy of the storm rather than stealing from their ship. "Smart," Paul said. "It's using the storm to rebuild its strength. That's probably what it was doing in the clouds before we arrived, just feeding on lightning." "It was like putting a feast in front of a starving person," Henry finished. "The dragon couldn't help itself." He told everyone to stay calm, to breathe slowly, to not waste energy on unnecessary movement or talking. The dragon stayed with them the whole time. It moved through the storm with growing strength, always keeping the pods in sight, always shielding them from the worst of the lightning. Several times, huge bolts that would have destroyed the small pods struck the dragon instead. The creature took the hits without complaint. 3 hours, 45 minutes, Karen reported. Her voice sounded tired. Still no sign of rescue ships. The rescue ships wouldn't even know where to look for them. His decision to give away their power cells might have doomed them all. But then Danny spoke up, his young voice filled with excitement despite the thin air. "Captain, the dragon. Look what it's doing." The beam was bright, brighter than anything Henry had seen before. It cut through the storm like a lighthouse cutting through fog. "It's making a signal," Lisa gasped. "It's showing the rescue ships where we are." When it finally closed its mouth, the creature looked exhausted again, but there was something in its eyes that looked almost like a smile. "Picking up something on sensors," Karen shouted. "Multiple ships incoming, they saw the signal." They were going to make it. The dragon had saved them again. The rescue ships appeared 15 minutes later, 5 vessels that cut through the storm with their powerful shields. They surrounded the escape pods quickly, preparing to bring the crew to safety. Henry watched through his viewport as the rescue workers in their suits began attaching tow lines to the pods. But everyone's attention was on the dragon. The creature hadn't fled when the ships arrived. Instead, it stayed close, watching carefully as the rescuers worked. Several of the rescue workers stopped their tasks to stare at the magnificent being floating nearby. "Rescue command to Captain Martinez," a voice came through the communication system. "Sir, what is that thing? Our sensors are going crazy. We've never seen anything like it." When all the pods were safely attached to the rescue vessels, the dragon moved closer one last time. It came right up to the pod where Henry waited. The two of them looked at each other through the small viewport, human and dragon, separated by metal and glass but connected by something deeper. In that moment, Henry felt he understood the creature completely. It had been alone in the storm, hungry and hurt, probably for a very long time. When it found their ship, desperation had made it act without thinking. But underneath that desperation was a being capable of compassion, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Henry placed his hand against the inside of the viewport. The dragon moved its massive head closer, as if it could feel the gesture through the metal and glass. Then it pulled back slowly and turned away, heading back into the storm clouds. "Wait," Lisa said softly. "Will we ever see it again?" That this wasn't goodbye forever, just goodbye for now. The dragon disappeared into the storm, and the lightning seemed to dance around it in welcome, as if the storm itself was greeting an old friend coming home. Within moments, the creature was gone, leaving only the memory of its presence and the knowledge that humanity had just discovered something incredible in the vast darkness of space. Inside the rescue ship medical bay an hour later, Henry sat with his crew as doctors checked them over. They were tired, bruised, and they had come within minutes of running out of air. But they were alive, and they had an amazing story to tell. A science officer approached Henry with a tablet. "Captain Martinez, we need your full report. Command wants to know everything about this creature. They're calling it a dragon, but we need proper classification, behavior patterns, everything you observed." This wasn't a monster they had encountered. It was an intelligent being, capable of thought and feeling and sacrifice. It had made mistakes in its desperation, but it had also shown the capacity for something greater. It had shown that even across the vast gulf between species, understanding was possible. Friendship was possible. "What should we do if we encounter another one?" the science officer asked. Henry thought about the power cells they had offered, about the dragon's protection during the storm, about that final look between them. "We treat them with respect. We offer help when we can. We remember that just because something looks different or powerful doesn't mean it's our enemy. Tell them to bring energy cells, not as weapons but as gifts, as a way to say we come in peace." He looked out the medical bay window at the storm in the distance. Somewhere in those clouds, the dragon was feeding, healing, growing strong again. And maybe next time we meet one of its kind, it won't be afraid. Maybe next time, we'll start as friends instead of enemies. The Aurora's dream would need months of repairs, and there would be investigations and meetings, and probably some people who thought he was crazy for risking his crew to save a creature they barely understood. But he didn't care. Today, humanity had learned an important lesson. The universe was full of wonders, and some of those wonders were just waiting for someone brave enough to reach out with an open hand instead of a closed fist. In the storm clouds far away, the dragon fed on lightning and remembered the small beings in their metal pod who had shared their precious energy when they had so little to spare. It remembered the hand pressed against the glass, the the gesture of connection between two very different forms of life. And in its own way, the dragon made a decision. If these small beings ever needed help again, if they ever called out in the storm, it would come. It would always come. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.